The year was 2008. Tofo Beach, located in the Inhambane province of Mozambique, had gained international recognition as a premier destination for marine enthusiasts since the early 2000s. The area was renowned for its pristine waters, vibrant coral reefs, and diverse marine life, attracting thousands of tourists annually. The coastal waters were particularly famous for their abundant manta rays and whale sharks, making it a paradise for divers and snorkelers alike. However, these same waters were also home to several species of predatory sharks, including the powerful bull shark, known locally as Zambezi. In July 2008, 5 European friends, Clara Müller, Stefan Hoffmann, Maria Janssen, Victor Novak, and Elise Dubois, arrived in Mozambique for what they anticipated would be a 2-week vacation filled with sun, sand, and underwater exploration. The friends, all in their late 20s, had met during their university studies in Vienna and had been planning this trip for over a year, saving diligently from their respective careers in medicine, engineering, and education. Their third day in Mozambique began with perfect weather conditions: bright sunshine, minimal wind, and calm seas. After a hearty breakfast at their beachfront accommodation, the quintet decided to explore the famed coral reef system approximately 200 meters from shore. Local guide Nyameko Banda had advised them to use the buddy system and maintain distance between swimming pairs, a common safety protocol in open waters. However, excited by the prospect of their first reef snorkeling experience together, the friends disregarded this advice. As they entered the water around 10:30 a.m., the group was in high spirits. Victor, an amateur marine biologist, was particularly enthusiastic about identifying various fish species. Instead of spreading out as recommended, the 5 friends clustered together in a tight formation, creating what marine experts would later describe as a confusion pattern in the water. Their excited movements and splashing produced unusual vibrations and disturbances that traveled through the water column. Approximately 400 meters away, a large bull shark estimated to be 3.5 meters in length was hunting along the reef edge. Marine biologist Dr. Amara Khoury, who later investigated the incident, explained that bull sharks have highly sensitive electroreceptors that can detect electrical impulses generated by swimming animals. The disorganized movements of the 5 friends, combined with their proximity to each other, created an anomalous disturbance pattern that mimicked the movements of injured prey. The shark changed course and began moving deliberately toward the group. Tourist Brendan McAllister, who was photographing birds from a nearby bluff, captured the entire sequence with his telephoto lens. His images would later provide crucial evidence for understanding the attack dynamics. Around 10:45 a.m., Elise noticed a dark shape approaching their group. Before she could alert the others, the bull shark had closed the distance with remarkable speed. The first attack was swift and targeted. The shark struck Clara from below, pulling her under with such force that the others initially thought she had dived. The water around them suddenly clouded with blood as Clara resurfaced briefly, attempting to call for help before being pulled under again. Panic erupted among the remaining swimmers. Rather than dispersing as shark safety protocols would recommend, they clustered even more tightly together, creating additional water disturbance. This response, while psychologically natural, further intensified the predatory trigger. Stefan, attempting to reach Clara, swam directly into the shark's path and became the second victim. The powerful predator struck him in the torso, causing catastrophic injuries. Maria, witnessing both attacks, attempted to swim toward shore but was hampered by shock and disorientation. The shark, now in what experts describe as a feeding frenzy state, quickly targeted her as well. Local fisherman Domingos Machava, who had been preparing his boat nearby, reported hearing the screams and immediately set out to help, but by the time he reached the site, Maria had sustained fatal injuries. Victor and Elise, swimming frantically toward shore, were aided by 2 South African tourists who had grabbed kayaks and paddled out to assist. The rescuers managed to pull Victor and Elise from the water just as the shark circled back toward them. Both survivors were brought to shore in a state of extreme shock and physical exhaustion. Emergency services arrived within 15 minutes, but it was too late for their 3 friends. The bodies of Clara, Stefan, and Maria were recovered later that afternoon by the Mozambican Coast Guard. Autopsies revealed that all 3 had died from massive trauma and blood loss consistent with shark attacks. The incident sent shockwaves through Tofo's tourist community. Local authorities implemented immediate safety measures, including temporary beach closures, installation of shark nets in popular swimming areas, and mandatory safety briefings for all water activities. Tour operators were required to provide shark deterrent devices and enhance their emergency response capabilities. Victor and Elise, devastated by the loss of their friends, remained in Mozambique for 3 additional weeks, assisting authorities with the investigation and arranging for the repatriation of their friends' remains. In an interview with the local newspaper, Inhambane Daily, Victor acknowledged their fatal mistake. Marine conservation organizations use the tragedy as an opportunity to educate the public about shark behavior and proper safety protocols in shark-inhabited waters. Dr. Kauri emphasized that the clustering behavior of the group had likely been the critical factor in triggering the attack. She explained that sharks didn't typically consider humans as prey, but when people moved in ways that mimic injured animals, it could activate their predatory instincts. A memorial service was held on Tofo Beach 1 week after the incident, attended by locals and tourists alike. 3 coral reefs were subsequently named after Clara, Stefan, and Maria, with conservation markers placed to remind visitors of the importance of respecting marine safety guidelines. Today, a small plaque stands near the entrance to Tofo Beach, reminding visitors that even the smallest decisions can have profound consequences when interacting with the ocean's apex predators. The tragedy remains one of the deadliest shark incidents in Mozambique's history, a somber reminder of nature's power and the vital importance of heeding local safety advice. Uluwatu, located on the southwestern tip of Bali's Bukit Peninsula, had been a renowned surfing destination since the 1970s, when the first intrepid Australian surfers discovered its perfect left-hand break. The area was famous for its limestone cliffs, ancient temple, and most importantly, its consistent waves that attracted surfers from around the globe. Despite its popularity, Uluwatu had historically recorded very few shark incidents, with local Balinese considering the waters relatively safe compared to other surfing hotspots worldwide. Luke Donovan, a 25-year-old surfing instructor from Perth, Australia, had been visiting Bali annually since his teenage years. Having grown up along Western Australia's shark-prone coastline, Luke was well-versed in shark safety protocols. He had moved to Bali 6 months earlier to work at a local surf school, quickly earning respect among the tight-knit expatriate surfing community for his water skills and friendly demeanor. On the morning of April 12, 2017, Luke arrived at Uluwatu Beach shortly after sunrise, a routine he had maintained since his arrival in Bali. Weather conditions were ideal: light offshore winds, clear skies, and a consistent 4-foot swell. Approximately 20 other surfers were already in the water, spread across the 300-meter break. Luke's colleague, Wayan Dharma, reported that nothing seemed unusual about the conditions or Luke's behavior as he paddled out. After catching several waves, Luke was positioned approximately 150 meters from shore when he began paddling back toward the beach. According to multiple witnesses, including American tourist Melissa Thornton, who was filming the surf session from the cliff above, Luke suddenly stopped paddling and looked behind him with visible concern. What happened next was captured on Thornton's video, which would later become crucial evidence in understanding the unusual attack. A large tiger shark, estimated by marine biologists to be approximately 3.5 meters in length, appeared in the footage, approaching Luke from deeper water. Unlike typical shark behavior, which often involves investigative circling, this shark moved directly toward Luke with deliberate speed. Marine biologist Dr. Ario Sulistio, who later analyzed the footage, noted that the shark exhibited what experts call target-locked behavior, a rare but documented hunting approach. Luke, clearly spotting the threat, immediately began paddling toward shore with powerful strokes. Fellow surfer Thomas Brower, positioned about 30 meters away, heard Luke shouting warnings to other surfers. Thomas immediately paddled toward the shore as well, alerting others in the water to the danger. The tiger shark gained rapidly on Luke, who was now just 80 meters from the beach. In an unusual escalation of predatory behavior, the shark accelerated and struck Luke's surfboard from behind, knocking him into the water. Witness accounts described how Luke resurfaced quickly and attempted to use his surfboard as a barrier between himself and the shark, a technique taught in many surf safety protocols. For a brief moment, this strategy appeared successful as the shark circled once. However, in a second approach, the shark grabbed Luke by the leg, pulling him underwater in what marine experts call a submersion attack, a technique tiger sharks typically employ when hunting turtles or large fish. The water around Luke immediately clouded with blood as he struggled to resurface. Nearby surfers Benjamin Walker and Kadek Suparta bravely paddled toward the attack site, attempting to reach Luke. Despite their efforts, the shark dragged Luke into deeper waters before they could get to him. His body was recovered several hours later by a joint search effort involving local authorities and the Balinese Coast Guard. The incident sent shockwaves through Bali's surfing community. Local authorities temporarily closed Uluwatu Beach, while marine experts investigated the unusual attack. Dr. Sulistio's team collected water samples and interviewed witnesses, eventually attributing the shark's abnormal behavior to several potential factors. Chief among these was the recent increase in illegal fishing practices near Uluwatu, which often involved chumming, the practice of disposing fish blood and entrails into the water, potentially conditioning sharks to associate human activity with food. Memorial services were held for Luke both in Bali and in his hometown of Perth. His parents, Richard and Margaret Donovan, traveled to Bali to recover their son's remains and meet with the surfers who had attempted to save him. In an emotional beachside ceremony, they expressed gratitude to the rescuers who spent hours searching and recovering their son's body. In response to the tragedy, local authorities implemented new safety protocols for Uluwatu and neighboring beaches, including drone surveillance, increased lifeguard presence, and strict enforcement of anti-chumming regulations for fishing vessels. Additionally, the Balinese regional government partnered with Australian shark researchers to establish an early warning system similar to those used along Western Australia's coastline. Luke's death marked the first fatal shark attack at Uluwatu in recorded history and served as a somber reminder of the unpredictable nature of the ocean, even in areas considered relatively safe. Today, a small plaque commemorating Luke stands near the entrance to Uluwatu Beach, serving both as a memorial and a warning to visitors about the rare but real dangers that exist in even the most paradisiacal waters. The waters surrounding Maui have long been revered for their extraordinary biodiversity and clarity, making them a premier destination for underwater photography. Since the 1950s, when Jacques Cousteau pioneered underwater filmmaking techniques, photographers from around the world have journeyed to these Pacific waters to capture images of colorful reef fish, graceful manta rays, and occasionally, the ocean's apex predators, sharks. While Maui hosts numerous shark species, tiger sharks are particularly notable residents, with the island's channels serving as important transit routes for these large predators. Laura Klein, a 36-year-old professional underwater photographer from California, had built an impressive portfolio over her 15-year career, specializing in marine life documentation for publications including National Geographic, Ocean Explorer, and Marine Conservation Quarterly. Her work had taken her to some of the world's most remote dive locations, but Hawaii remained a perennial favorite due to its reliable conditions and abundant subjects. In May 2019, Laura arrived in Maui to work on an assignment documenting the relationship between reef health and fish populations. After several successful days of shooting in shallower waters, she arranged to explore Molokini Crater, a partially submerged volcanic caldera located approximately 3 miles off Maui's southwestern shore. The crater, designated as a marine life conservation district since 1977, was renowned for its protected ecosystem and exceptional visibility, sometimes exceeding 150 feet. On the morning of May 12th, Laura joined a small chartered boat operated by veteran dive master Kekoa Nakamura. 2 other photographers, Serbian-American Miloš Petrović and Japanese national Yumi Tanaka, accompanied them along with Kekoa's assistant Leilani Wong. Weather conditions were ideal: sunny skies, light winds, and minimal surface chop. Water temperature hovered around 77 degrees Fahrenheit, typical for that time of year. The group conducted their first dive inside the crater without incident, spending approximately 50 minutes photographing the vibrant reef system. After a surface interval of 1 hour, they relocated to Edge Site, a location along the crater's outer wall known for attracting larger pelagic species. Kekoa briefed the team about maintaining vigilance in this area, as it occasionally attracted sharks from the deeper channel. The second dive began at 11:45 a.m., with the group descending to a depth of approximately 70 feet. After photographing a school of jacks for about 30 minutes, Laura noticed a large tiger shark swimming in the distance. She estimated its length at approximately 12 feet, a substantial specimen but not unusually large for the species in Hawaiian waters. Rather than retreating, Laura seized the opportunity to photograph the impressive predator. According to Milos, who witnessed the subsequent events, Laura signaled her intentions to Keikoa, who hesitantly approved but indicated they should maintain a substantial distance. Laura, eager to capture compelling images, began swimming toward the shark, adjusting her camera settings as she approached. Leilani later reported that Laura maintained what appeared to be a respectful distance of about 25 feet from the shark, positioning herself slightly above and to the side of the animal, a technique often used by experienced photographers to appear less threatening. For several minutes, the shark showed no signs of agitation, swimming in a regular pattern that allowed Laura to capture numerous images. The situation changed abruptly when the shark altered its course, making a sharp turn toward Laura. Keikoa immediately signaled for her to retreat, but Laura, focusing through her camera viewfinder, apparently failed to notice the warning. In a matter of seconds, the shark accelerated toward her with surprising speed. The initial contact was not a bite, but rather a powerful body check, a behavior tiger sharks sometimes use to investigate objects. The impact knocked Laura sideways and dislodged her regulator momentarily. As she recovered and attempted to re-establish her orientation, the shark circled back and approached again. This time, the shark's behavior escalated to what marine biologists called offensive investigation, grasping Laura's leg in its jaws. The pressure was sufficient to cause serious lacerations but fell short of the full-force bite the animal was capable of delivering, what experts sometimes described as a test bite, rather than a predatory attack. Keikoa reacted with remarkable speed, deploying his emergency shark deterrent device, a specialized pole designed to create an electromagnetic field that overloads a shark's sensitive electroreceptors. Meanwhile, Milos and Yumi moved to assist Laura, who was struggling to maintain her depth control while reaching for her dropped camera equipment. The shark, likely confused by the electrical deterrent, released Laura's leg and retreated several meters but continued to circle the group. Keikoa signaled for an emergency ascent, and the team began moving toward the surface, maintaining a tight formation with Laura positioned in the center. As they ascended, the shark made one final approach, striking Laura's equipment rather than her body. In what Leilani later described as an incredibly instinctive reaction, Laura used her heavy camera housing to deflect the shark, pushing it away from her face and torso. This defensive maneuver appeared to discourage further investigation, and the shark finally descended into deeper water. The group completed their emergency ascent with Keikoa and Milos supporting Laura between them. Upon reaching the surface, they discovered the extent of her injuries, multiple lacerations to her right calf and thigh, significant enough to require immediate medical attention but fortunately not life-threatening. The boat captain, Alika Kealoha, had already radioed for emergency assistance after observing the rush descent. A Coast Guard vessel intercepted them halfway back to shore, transferring Laura to the island's hospital, where she underwent surgery to repair muscle damage and clean the wound sites. Remarkably, no major arteries had been compromised, though she required over 60 stitches across multiple lacerations. During her recovery, Laura demonstrated an unusual perspective on the incident. Rather than expressing anger or fear toward the shark, she acknowledged that her professional enthusiasm had led her to take unnecessary risks. In an interview with Maui News 3 weeks after the attack, she stated that she violated the first rule of underwater photography: no image is worth your safety. She further said that the shark was simply doing what tiger sharks would normally do when curious about something in their territory. What made Laura's case particularly notable in scientific circles was that her camera had continued recording throughout the encounter. The footage provided researchers with rare first-person documentation of tiger shark investigative behavior, contributing valuable data to studies on shark-human interactions. Marine biologist Dr. Helena Martins of the University of Hawaii later used the footage in developing improved guidelines for professional underwater photographers working in shark habitats. Laura's recovery took 6 months, during which she underwent physical therapy to regain full mobility in her injured leg. Despite her traumatic experience, she returned to underwater photography, though with a markedly more conservative approach to photographing large predators. Her subsequent work included advocacy for shark conservation and education about responsible wildlife photography practices. To date, Laura conducts workshops for aspiring marine photographers, using her experience as a powerful teaching tool about respecting boundaries with marine apex predators. Her encounter remains one of the most well-documented shark incidents in Hawaiian waters, providing both a cautionary tale and valuable scientific insights into tiger shark behavior. It happened in Port Alfred, Eastern Cape, South Africa, in 2008. The Eastern Cape coastline had long been notorious among local authorities for its illicit abalone trade. The valuable sea snails, considered a delicacy in Asian markets, had created a dangerous underground economy where poachers risked treacherous waters and harsh penalties to harvest the increasingly endangered species. The coastal area surrounding Port Alfred was particularly known for its rich abalone beds, and for the dangerous currents that swept around the jagged underwater rock formations that dotted the coastline. On a gray morning in October 2008, the Port Alfred Coast Guard discovered an abandoned fishing vessel drifting approximately 3 kilometers offshore. The small boat contained rudimentary diving equipment, several empty mesh bags typically used for abalone collection, and a half-empty water bottle. The boat's owner, a local man known to authorities for previous poaching activities, was nowhere to be found. After 24 hours with no sign of the missing poacher, local officials called for volunteer divers to assist in what they presumed would be a recovery operation rather than a rescue. Johan Kruger, a 40-year-old retired South African Navy diver with 17 years of specialized experience in search and recovery operations, was among the first to volunteer. Despite having left the military 5 years earlier to open a dive shop in nearby Kenton-on-Sea, Johan maintained close connections with local maritime authorities and regularly assisted in emergency operations. His reputation for remaining composed in challenging underwater conditions made him an invaluable asset for the search team. The volunteer team assembled included Johan, 2 current Coast Guard divers, and 3 civilian volunteers with advanced certification. After reviewing nautical charts and analyzing the prevailing currents from when the boat was likely abandoned, the team identified 3 potential search areas centered around a notorious reef shelf known locally as Poacher's Ledge. This underwater formation dropped suddenly from 15 meters to over 40 meters in depth and was known for its swirling currents and typically poor visibility. The first dive yielded nothing of note, though the conditions, visibility under 3 meters and strong lateral currents, made the search particularly challenging. The team surfaced after 50 minutes, rested for 2 hours while reassessing their strategy, then prepared for a second descent with a modified search grid. During the surface interval, Johan spoke with the others about his concern that the missing man might have been caught in the underwater cave system that riddled portions of the reef. Having explored these caves during calmer conditions years earlier, Johan suggested they expand their search perimeter to include 2 known larger cavern entrances. For the second dive, the team split into 3 pairs to cover more territory. Johan partnered with Thomas Ndlovu, a 32-year-old Coast Guard diver with whom he had worked previously. They descended along the eastern edge of the reef shelf, where the current was slightly less aggressive. At 18 meters deep, the visibility deteriorated further, forcing the divers to stay within arm's reach of one another. 30 minutes into their search, Johan signaled to Tomas that he had spotted something unusual near a cavern entrance. What appeared to be scrape marks on the reef that might indicate someone had grasped at the rock while being pulled by a current. Johan gestured that he would investigate slightly ahead while Thomas maintained their position as a reference point. As Johan moved forward through the murky water, a large shape emerged suddenly from the deeper water below the ledge. The tiger shark, later estimated to be nearly 4 meters long, had likely been drawn to the area by trace blood in the water from the abalone poacher's earlier activities. With no warning, the predator surged upward and clamped its jaws around Johan's right side, catching him between his hip and rib cage. Thomas, witnessing the attack through the poor visibility, later reported seeing Johan immediately reach for his dive knife secured at his ankle. Despite the severe injury, Johan managed to strike at the shark multiple times, causing it to momentarily release its grip. In that brief window, Thomas reached Johan and began an emergency ascent, inflating both their buoyancy compensators and pulling his injured partner toward the surface. The pair breached the surface approximately 70 meters from their support boat. Thomas's frantic calls for assistance brought the vessel alongside within minutes, and the crew pulled Johan aboard. Despite immediate first aid efforts and the administration of emergency oxygen, Johan had lost too much blood. He was pronounced dead upon reaching the harbor, 47 minutes after the attack. The missing abalone poacher was never found, presumed to have been taken by the same shark or another predator attracted to the area. Marine conservation authorities noted that October coincided with seasonal fish migrations that occasionally brought larger predators closer to shore than usual. Johan Kruger's funeral drew hundreds of attendees from across the South African diving community. The Eastern Cape provincial government posthumously awarded him the Civilian Service Medal for his sacrifice during a volunteer rescue operation. His widow, Marie Kruger, established the Johan Kruger Maritime Safety Foundation, which provided subsidized advanced training for search and rescue divers throughout the Eastern Cape province. The Port Alfred Coast Guard implemented new safety protocols for volunteer search operations following the incident, including mandatory shark shields for all divers and stricter limitations on search conditions. Johan's former dive shop in Kenton-on-Sea was renamed Kruger's Legacy and continued to operate under his original business partner, with a portion of all proceeds supporting marine safety education in local communities. To this day, local divers in the Eastern Cape region remember Johan Kruger as the embodiment of service above self, a man who, even after leaving professional duty, never hesitated to risk his safety to help others in peril on the sea that had defined his life. Aliwal Shoal, an ancient submerged sandstone reef approximately 5 kilometers offshore from Umkomaas on South Africa's east coast, has earned its reputation as one of the world's premier shark diving destinations. Lara Westmoreland had developed a nearly symbiotic relationship with this underwater world. At 28, the South African freediver had already established herself as one of the country's foremost marine wildlife guides, specializing in non-invasive shark encounters. Unlike many operators who relied on baiting to attract sharks, Lara had pioneered techniques using knowledge of shark behavior and underwater acoustics to facilitate natural encounters. Her approach had earned her both acclaim in conservation circles and a waiting list of international clients eager to experience her unique educational excursions. In March 2015, Lara had arranged a specialized photography trip for 3 visitors: Xavier Dupont, a French wildlife photographer working on a book about threatened marine species; Hiroshi Tanaka, a Japanese documentary filmmaker; and Elena Voronova, a Russian marine biology student who was conducting research on shark social behavior. The group had spent 3 days documenting the reef's resident ragged-toothed sharks and occasional tiger sharks, with exceptional results. On their 4th morning, weather conditions were perfect. Glassy surface conditions, excellent visibility predicted at over 20 meters, and a gentle current flowing northward along the reef. After checking the latest satellite data on water temperatures and plankton concentrations, Lara suggested they visit a section of the reef known locally as Cathedral, a series of dramatic pinnacles and swim-throughs rising from 30 meters to within 15 meters of the surface. This area was known for occasional visits from great white sharks, particularly during the sardine run season, though their presence in March was unusual. After a thorough briefing that emphasized safety protocols and communication signals, the group departed aboard Lara's custom research vessel, Manta Ray. The 40-minute journey to the site passed with excited discussion of the previous day's encounters. Lara reminded her clients that free diving with sharks required absolute focus and controlled movement. Any erratic behavior could potentially trigger a predator's interest. Upon reaching the site, the team performed their standard water entry procedures. Lara entered first to assess conditions while the others remained aboard. After signaling the all clear, the group joined her one by one. The visibility exceeded expectations, with sunlight penetrating the clear blue water to illuminate the reef structures below. For nearly 40 minutes, the dive progressed flawlessly. The group encountered a small school of hammerhead sharks passing through the area, maintaining a respectful distance while Xavier and Hiroshi captured stunning footage. Lara, constantly scanning the surrounding water, noticed shifting behavior in the reef fish, a subtle but unmistakable sign of a larger predator's approach. Signaling her group to position themselves against one of the reef pinnacles, Lara floated motionless, watching as a large female great white shark glided into view approximately 20 meters away. She estimated the shark at nearly 4.5 meters long, a mature individual displaying the confident, measured movements typical of an experienced hunter. The shark showed no immediate interest in the divers, instead patrolling the perimeter of the reef in what appeared to be a hunting pattern. Lara signaled for the group to remain still while beginning a slow, deliberate ascent toward their support boat. The established protocol for great white encounters emphasized minimizing time in the water while maintaining visual contact with the animal. Elena and Xavier began moving toward the surface, with Hiroshi following slightly behind, continuing to film the extraordinary encounter. The situation deteriorated with shocking speed. As Lara monitored the shark's movement, an unexpected second great white, slightly smaller but more aggressive in its movements, appeared from deeper water. Before Lara could react, this shark altered course directly toward her, accelerating with purpose. The attack happened with devastating efficiency. The shark struck Lara's torso from below, its upper jaw clamping across her rib cage, while the lower jaw secured around her back. The force drove both Lara and the predator momentarily toward the surface before the shark began to descend, dragging her deeper. Despite catastrophic injury and overwhelming shock, Lara's extensive training activated. Using her carbon-free diving fins as leverage, she struck repeatedly at the shark's sensitive gill area while simultaneously twisting to break free from its grip. After several seconds that seemed to extend into eternity, the shark released her, possibly startled by her resistance or deciding she wasn't a suitable prey. Xavier, witnessing the attack from above, immediately dived toward Lara while Elena raced to the boat to prepare the emergency medical kit. Together, Xavier and Hiroshi managed to bring the severely injured Lara to the surface, where her crew assisted in getting her aboard. The extensive lacerations across her torso and back were bleeding profusely, and several ribs had been crushed by the immense pressure of the shark's jaws. The boat captain, Thabo Mbeki, radioed for emergency assistance while racing toward shore at maximum speed. Elena, who had emergency medical training, established pressure bandages and administered oxygen from the boat's emergency supplies. Remarkably, Lara remained conscious throughout much of the journey, even providing instructions to her team between moments of extreme pain. A medical helicopter intercepted the boat approximately halfway to shore, transferring Lara to Durban's trauma center. She underwent 11 hours of surgery to repair damaged organs, close the massive wounds, and stabilize her shattered ribcage. The medical team later stated that her exceptional physical conditioning as a freediver had likely saved her life, both during the attack and throughout the medical crisis that followed. Lara's recovery spanned 18 months of surgeries, physical therapy, and psychological counseling to address the post-traumatic stress. The attack had left her with significant scarring and permanent nerve damage across her left side. Many assumed her career in the water had ended, a reasonable conclusion that Lara herself initially shared during the darkest days of her recovery. Yet by late 2016, Lara had returned to the ocean, though not as a freediver. She redirected her expertise toward shark conservation education, founding the Blue Horizon Initiative, which focused on developing improved safety protocols for shark researchers and countering sensationalized media coverage of shark incidents. Her first-hand experience lent powerful authenticity to her advocacy work. The great white that attacked her was never positively identified, though researchers noted an unusual inland movement of these sharks that season, potentially related to changing water temperatures or shifts in prey distribution. Footage from Hiroshi's camera was later used in scientific studies examining predatory behavior, contributing valuable data to shark researchers worldwide. Lara Westmoreland's near-fatal encounter became a powerful testimonial in marine conservation circles, not as a cautionary tale against entering shark territory, but as evidence that even the most serious incidents should promote understanding rather than fear. The Yasawa Archipelago, a chain of 15 ancient volcanic islands stretching northwest from Fiji's main island of Viti Levu, had long attracted marine scientists for its exceptionally diverse reef ecosystems. Jamie Eversley had built her early career around these pristine waters. At 25, the American marine biologist had already established herself as a promising researcher specializing in coral symbiosis, the complex relationships between coral polyps and their microscopic algal partners. After completing her doctorate at the University of Queensland in Australia, Jamie had secured a prestigious research grant, allowing her to establish a small field station on Tavewa Island in the central Yasawas. From this base, she coordinated a multinational team studying how certain coral species adapted to fluctuating water temperatures. The project had been underway for approximately 7 months when the incident occurred. By April 2019, Jamie's team, consisting of Australian field technician Marcus Henshaw, Fijian research assistant Viliame Tagivatawa, and visiting Brazilian oceanographer Dr. Luisa Ferreira, had mapped and cataloged coral communities across 17 sites surrounding the central Yasawa Islands. Their work revealed promising data about heat-resistant coral species that might help scientists develop strategies for preserving reefs threatened by warming oceans elsewhere. On April 23rd, the team embarked on what was planned as a routine survey of a previously documented reef section off the eastern coast of Nakula Island. The site, located approximately 1 kilometer offshore in the channel between Nakula and Matakawa-Levu Islands, featured a dramatic underwater topography where the reef abruptly dropped from shallow waters to a deeper channel approximately 30 meters below. This reef edge habitat was particularly valuable for research, as it hosted distinct coral communities adapted to different light and current conditions within a compact area. The weather conditions that morning were ideal, with clear skies, calm seas, and minimal wind. The team departed their Tavewa base at 8:30 a.m. aboard their 7-meter research vessel, arriving at the site by 9:15 a.m. After anchoring in 20 meters of water near the reef drop-off, they performed their standard pre-dive checks and equipment verification. Jamie's dive plan called for the team to separate into pairs. She would work with William documenting coral species distribution along the reef edge, while Marcus and Dr. Ferreira collected water samples and temperature data at various depths. Jamie and William entered the water first, descending along the anchor line to begin their survey. For nearly 40 minutes, they methodically photographed and collected small coral samples, with Jamie recording observations on her underwater slate. The work was proceeding efficiently, and visibility was exceptional at nearly 30 meters, allowing them to see far along the reef wall and into the deeper blue water beyond. As they approached the final quadrant of their survey area, Jamie noticed the water growing unusually still. Experienced divers recognized this sudden stillness as a potential warning sign, often preceding the arrival of a large predator. She signaled to William to pause their work and maintain situational awareness while she scanned the surrounding water. Within moments, her concern proved justified as a large bull shark emerged from the deeper water approximately 15 meters away. Bull sharks, known scientifically as Carcharinus lucus, were among the most dangerous shark species for humans, combining powerful bodies with aggressive territorial behavior and the unique ability to tolerate both saltwater and freshwater environments. This particular specimen, later estimated at nearly 3 meters long, displayed the species' robust body and blunt snout as it began methodically circling the divers. Jamie and William immediately implemented their predator encounter protocol, positioning themselves back-to-back against the reef wall to eliminate blind spots while maintaining steady breathing to avoid creating erratic movements or sounds. The shark completed 3 slow circuits around them, each slightly closer than the previous, exhibiting classic investigative behavior. Jamie signaled that they should begin a controlled ascent toward their boat while maintaining visual contact with the predator. As they began moving upward along the reef face, the shark's behavior suddenly changed. Without the typical preliminary warning signs, such as lowered pectoral fins or exaggerated swimming patterns, the bull shark charged directly at Jamie. The attack happened with terrifying speed, the shark's jaws clamping onto her right arm just below the shoulder and dragging her away from the reef into open water. The pressure was immediately catastrophic, the shark's multiple rows of serrated teeth easily penetrating Jamie's 3mm wetsuit and into muscle and bone beneath. The initial strike was followed by the characteristic shake behavior as the predator attempted to tear flesh from its prey. Despite overwhelming pain and shock, Jamie managed to recall her emergency training. Using her left hand, she struck repeatedly at the shark's sensitive eye and gill areas, the only defensive tactics available to a diver under attack. William, reacting with remarkable courage, immediately pursued Jamie and her attacker. Removing the metal survey stake from his equipment belt, he drove it forcefully toward the shark's gills, one of the few vulnerable areas on the animal's body. After several strikes, the shark released Jamie and turned its aggression briefly toward William before ultimately retreating into deeper water. Securing his arm around Jamie's waist, William began an emergency ascent, careful to maintain a safe rate to avoid decompression injuries despite the crisis. Marcus and Dr. Ferreira, who had been working approximately 40 meters away, noticed the commotion and converged to assist. Together, they managed to bring the severely injured Jamie to the surface and into their research vessel. Once aboard, Dr. Ferreira, who fortunately had emergency medical training, immediately applied pressure bandages to the catastrophic wounds on Jamie's arm, while Marcus radioed for emergency assistance. The nearest medical facility with trauma capabilities was at Lautoka on Viti Levu, nearly 3 hours away by their vessel's maximum speed. A medical evacuation by helicopter was arranged, but would require at least 50 minutes to reach their location. Throughout the agonizing wait, the team fought to keep Jamie stable, as shock and blood loss threatened her life. Using their satellite phone, they consulted with a physician in Lautoka who guided them through emergency procedures. William, drawing on traditional Fijian knowledge, supplemented the modern first aid with a local plant extract known for its coagulant properties, applying it to the bandages with Dr. Ferreira's cautious approval. The helicopter arrived after 67 minutes, during which Jamie had drifted in and out of consciousness. The paramedics aboard stabilized her for transport, and she was airlifted directly to Lautoka Hospital, where a surgical team was standing by. The extensive injuries required 7 hours of surgery to repair damaged blood vessels, stabilize shattered bones, and close the massive tissue damage. Jamie survived but faced a long and arduous recovery. After initial stabilization in Fiji, she was transferred to Australia for specialized reconstructive surgeries and rehabilitation. The attack caused permanent nerve damage and limited mobility in her right arm, though remarkably, she retained functional use of her hand thanks to swift medical intervention. 6 months after the incident, Jamie returned to her research not in the water, but by leading data analysis and publication efforts from the University of Queensland. Her team continued the fieldwork she had initiated, implementing new safety protocols inspired by her experience. Though her role had changed, her passion had not, and the work carried on, driven by the same determination that had brought her to the reef in the first place. In 2016, the waters off Mossel Bay on South Africa's Western Cape had long been recognized among adventure sports enthusiasts as a premier destination for kayaking, despite its notorious reputation as a great white shark hotspot. The region's unique marine ecosystem, characterized by seal colonies and deep underwater canyons, created ideal hunting grounds for these apex predators. Tourism brochures often highlighted the thrill of potentially glimpsing these magnificent creatures from the safety of tour boats. Yet solo kayaking in these waters carried risks that even experienced paddlers sometimes underestimated. Emma Carlisle, a 34-year-old British adventure athlete with 12 years of solo kayaking experience across 5 continents, had been drawn to the area specifically for its challenging conditions. Having previously navigated the treacherous waters of Alaska's Inside Passage and New Zealand's storm-prone coastlines, Carlisle believed her extensive experience had prepared her for whatever Mossel Bay might present. Local maritime authorities had cautioned her about recent shark sightings. Still, Carlisle, who had documented her adventures for a popular outdoor lifestyle blog, considered such warnings part of the standard procedure, rather than a cause for serious concern. On the morning of March 17th, Carlisle launched her specially designed carbon fiber sea kayak from a small beach near Pinnacle Point. The weather conditions were ideal: clear skies, moderate winds, and gentle swells. She carried state-of-the-art safety equipment, including a satellite emergency beacon, marine radio, and shark deterrent devices. Her planned route would take her along the coastline for approximately 12 kilometers before circling back, keeping her within sight of land throughout the journey. For the first hour, Carlisle's excursion proceeded uneventfully. She later reported to investigating authorities that she had been photographing seabirds when she first noticed unusual turbulence in the water, approximately 20 meters ahead of her kayak. Initially, she assumed it was a seal, common in these waters and often curious about kayakers. Carlisle reduced her paddling pace to observe what she thought might make an interesting photo opportunity for her blog. The turbulence intensified suddenly, forming a distinct wake pattern that local fishermen would have immediately recognized as indicative of a large shark moving at speed just beneath the surface. Before Carlisle could process what was happening, her kayak jerked violently upward. The impact threw her forward, nearly capsizing the vessel. As she struggled to stabilize herself, a massive great white shark, later estimated by marine biologists to be approximately 4.5 meters long, breached directly beside her kayak. The force of the breach completely flipped the vessel, sending Carlisle into the water less than a meter from the shark. According to her subsequent statement to emergency responders, her survival training immediately kicked in. Rather than panicking, she attempted to climb back onto her overturned kayak, knowing that remaining in the water significantly increased her vulnerability. As she reached for the kayak's hull, the shark circled back with astonishing speed. What happened next occurred in seconds, but would forever alter Carlisle's life. The great white clamped onto her left arm below the elbow with devastating force. Rather than initiating the typical bite and release behavior sharks often exhibit when investigating unfamiliar objects, this shark maintained its grip and began to shake violently. The trauma surgeons who later treated Carlisle explained that the combination of 300-pound bite force and serrated teeth effectively severed her arm instantaneously. Remarkably, Carlisle did not lose consciousness. In what marine rescue personnel later described as an extraordinary display of presence of mind, She managed to use her right hand to remove the kayak leash from around her ankle and apply it as a makeshift tourniquet around what remained of her left arm. The entire attack lasted less than 30 seconds. The shark disappeared as quickly as it had arrived, leaving Carlyle bleeding heavily, but still conscious and clinging to her overturned kayak. Using her remaining arm and legs, she positioned herself atop the hull, elevating her injured limb to reduce blood loss. What saved Carlyle's life was a combination of extraordinary fortune and her calm resourcefulness. A local fishing vessel, the Meermin, captained by veteran fisherman Adrian Visser, happened to be returning to harbor and spotted the overturned kayak approximately 18 minutes after the attack. Visser and his crew quickly retrieved Carlyle from the water and applied proper medical tourniquets from their emergency kit. While radioing for emergency medical assistance, Carlyle was airlifted to a hospital and later transferred to a specialized trauma center in Cape Town, where surgeons performed additional procedures to clean and close her wound. Against considerable odds, she survived without developing serious infections or complications. In the years following the attack, Carlyle became an advocate for shark conservation, arguing against culling programs and emphasizing that she had entered the shark's territory knowingly. She authored a memoir titled The Surface Between, chronicling her recovery journey and relationship with the ocean after the attack. During public appearances, she often displayed her prosthetic arm, which featured a detailed tattoo of a great white shark silhouette. A reminder, she explained, of the ocean's power and resilience. The attack prompted local authorities to implement stricter solo kayaking regulations in areas known for shark activity. New safety measures included mandatory emergency beacons, buddy systems, and restricted access during peak feeding times. The incident also drew the attention of marine biologists, who studied it closely as part of ongoing research into great white behavior. They noted the bite's unusually aggressive and sustained nature, distinct from the more common investigatory sample bite that sharks typically use to identify unfamiliar objects. The case raised important questions about changing patterns in shark encounters and the potential influence of environmental stressors on their behavior. In 2005, the Limpopo River Delta in northern Mozambique had long served as a critical water source for communities scattered across the arid landscape. With its labyrinthine channels and seasonally flooded plains, the expansive wetland system supported remarkable biodiversity that had drawn increasing ecotourism to the region over the previous decade. What many visitors, and indeed some local guides, underestimated was how dramatically the river's ecosystem had been changing. Rising sea levels had gradually increased saltwater intrusion up to 50 kilometers inland, creating brackish conditions that unwittingly welcomed new apex predators to territories they had rarely ventured. Teo Namate, a 37-year-old naturalist with ancestral roots in the Delta communities, had established himself as one of the region's most knowledgeable eco-tour guides. His company, Delta Discoveries, specialized in small group canoe expeditions that showcased the river's spectacular bird life and occasional hippopotamus sightings. Namate grew up along these waterways, learning their patterns and secrets from his traditional fisherman grandfather. Despite his extensive experience, he failed to recognize the emerging danger lurking beneath the murky surface. On the morning of April 12th, Namate led a group of 6 international tourists, 2 retired ornithologists from Germany, a photographer from Japan, and 3 university students studying environmental science from Australia, on what was scheduled to be a 6-hour exploration of the Delta's central channels. The weather was ideal, with clear skies and temperatures hovering around 29 degrees Celsius. After unseasonal rains, the previous month's water level remained slightly higher than usual. According to statements later provided by the tourists, the expedition had proceeded uneventfully for approximately 3 hours. Namate impressed the group with his encyclopedic knowledge of local wildlife, identifying over 40 bird species and providing cultural context about the river's importance to indigenous communities. At approximately 11:15 a.m., the group paused in a wide, calm section of the river to photograph a colony of African open-bill storks nesting in the trees along the eastern bank. Namate maneuvered their wooden canoe, a traditional vessel nearly 7 meters long, toward a partially submerged sandbar where they could stabilize it for better photography opportunities. As the boat glided to a stop, he stepped into the knee-deep water to anchor the craft manually, a routine practice he had performed countless times before. The water, stained brown with sediment, provided no visibility below the surface. What happened next occurred with such speed that the witnesses provided slightly varying accounts to authorities. The most consistent description came from Dr. Marta Schneider, one of the German ornithologists, who had been photographing the scene and inadvertently captured a partial sequence of the attack. According to her statement and corroborating camera evidence, Namate had taken no more than 3 steps from the canoe when he suddenly cried out and lurched sideways. There was a massive displacement of water around his lower body, followed by his immediate disappearance beneath the surface. The initial confusion aboard the canoe quickly gave way to horror, as the water around Namate's last position turned dark red. The attack was so violent that the displacement wave rocked the canoe itself. The tourists, none of whom had significant wilderness emergency training, attempted to locate Namate with boat paddles, but found no trace of him. Approximately 40 seconds after his disappearance, his body briefly resurfaced approximately 15 meters downstream, now missing one leg. Before anyone could react, he was pulled under again. Jakob Weber, the second German ornithologist, had the mind to use the emergency satellite phone Namate had stored in a waterproof container. Local emergency services, however, would require nearly 2 hours to reach their remote location. Following Namate's basic safety briefing from earlier that morning, the tourists managed to navigate the canoe to the nearest designated emergency extraction point, a small fishing village approximately 3 kilometers downstream. 3 days later, Namate's severely mutilated remains were discovered by local fishermen washed up on a sandbank nearly 7 kilometers from the attack site. Forensic examination confirmed what marine biologists had already suspected. The distinctive bite patterns and dental impressions matched those of a bull shark, Carcharhinus lucus, a species notorious for its ability to tolerate freshwater and its exceptionally aggressive hunting behavior. Subsequent investigation revealed that several local fishermen had reported unusual fish kills and water disturbances in the previous weeks, but these accounts had not been widely shared or officially documented. One elderly fisherman later testified that he had observed a large shark-like creature nearly 2 weeks before Namate's death. However, he had been dismissed when reporting it to local authorities, who had attributed his sighting to crocodile activity or exaggeration. The incident triggered an urgent scientific survey of the Limpopo Delta system, revealing the presence of at least 3 adult bull sharks that had ventured far upriver. An unprecedented discovery in documented regional history. Climate researchers and marine biologists linked the phenomenon to changing environmental conditions, particularly the increasing salinity of traditionally freshwater systems due to rising sea levels and altered rainfall patterns. After the tragedy, Namate's widow Esperanza established the Teo Namate Foundation, which implemented a regional shark monitoring program and educational initiative for river guides and local communities. Warning signs were erected at river access points, and all tour operators were required to carry specialized shark deterrent equipment and enhanced communication systems. The tragedy also sparked important research into bull shark migration patterns in African river systems, ultimately discovering previously undocumented breeding grounds in multiple river deltas along the eastern African coast. Dr. Luisa Montero, the marine biologist who led this research, credited Namate's death with potentially saving many lives through the awareness and preventative measures it generated across the region's growing ecotourism industry. In 2015, the coastal waters surrounding Vancouver Island had long been recognized as one of the world's premier locations for studying orca populations. The Salish Sea's complex network of channels, inlets, and straits provided ideal habitat for several distinct pods of these magnificent marine mammals, drawing researchers from prestigious institutions worldwide. Unlike the more frequently documented resident orcas that primarily fed on salmon, the region's less studied transients orcas, mammal hunters with more unpredictable migration patterns, remained somewhat enigmatic to the scientific community. Their hunting behaviors and social structures presented ongoing questions that researchers like Dr. Rachel Taylor had dedicated their careers to answering. Dr. Taylor, a 42-year-old marine biologist with the Pacific Cetacean Research Institute, had spent 15 years documenting orca behavior throughout the Pacific Northwest. Her groundbreaking work on communication patterns between matrilineal groups had earned her considerable respect in marine science circles. On June 7th, she led a 4-person research team aboard the Institute's primary research vessel, the Cetacean Surveyor, a 12-meter purpose-built craft equipped with hydrophones, observation platforms, and specialized photography equipment. The research team included Dr. Taylor's longtime colleague, bioacoustic specialist Dr. Jameson Whitfield, graduate student and data analyst Penelope Zhao, and the vessel's experienced captain Marcus Okalik, who had navigated these waters for over 2 decades. Their expedition that day focused on monitoring a recently identified group of transient orcas spotted unusually far into the Johnstone Strait, potentially indicating a shift in hunting territories. Weather conditions were optimal that morning. Clear visibility, calm seas, and minimal wind, creating ideal conditions for observation and acoustic recording. Captain Okalik positioned the vessel approximately 200 meters from where the orcas had last been sighted, maintaining the legally mandated distance while allowing the team to deploy their hydrophone array. At approximately 9:45, they made visual contact with the pod, 5 individuals moving in tight formation. Dr. Taylor immediately identified the distinctive dorsal fin of a large male she had cataloged the previous season as T137, estimated to be approximately 30 years old and weighing nearly 6 tons. The team began their standard observation protocol, photographing dorsal fins for identification while recording underwater vocalizations. The encounter proceeded routinely for nearly 40 minutes. The orcas appeared engaged in typical foraging behavior, showing no unusual interest in the research vessel. While Dr. Whitfield monitored the acoustic feeds below deck, Zhao collected respiratory pattern data from the observation platform. Captain Okalik maintained the vessel's position using minimal engine power to reduce underwater noise interference. What happened next occurred so suddenly that the team's multiple recording devices proved essential in reconstructing the sequence of events. At 10:26, without any apparent provocation, T137 abruptly changed direction, submerging briefly before surfacing again, facing directly toward the cetacean surveyor. Dr. Taylor, recognizing this unusual behavior, instructed Captain Okalik to increase their distance from the pod. Before he could fully engage the engines, T137 disappeared beneath the surface. The underwater cameras captured what happened next. The massive orca accelerated directly toward the vessel with extraordinary speed, swimming with the distinctive rapid tail movements researchers had previously observed only during hunting pursuits. Captain Okalik had barely initiated evasive maneuvers when T137 struck the hull's port side with tremendous force. His full body weight concentrated at the point of impact. The collision violently rocked the vessel, sending equipment crashing to the deck and throwing the researchers off balance. Zhao, who had been standing on the observation platform, suffered a sprained wrist when she was thrown against the railing. Despite being reinforced for research in orca habitats, the vessel's hull sustained significant damage. A visible dent nearly 2 meters long that later examination revealed had compromised the structural integrity of 2 supporting ribs. Rather than retreating after the initial impact, T137 circled the vessel twice at high speed, creating a substantial wake that further destabilized the already damaged craft. The underwater cameras captured extraordinarily rare footage of what marine behaviorists later described as threat posturing. The orca's body oriented vertically in the water, head raised, with distinctive jaw-clapping behavior typically observed only during confrontations between competing males. Captain Okalik, drawing on his extensive experience, maintained remarkable composure throughout the encounter. He immediately initiated the vessel's emergency protocols, instructing the researchers to secure themselves and all loose equipment, while he carefully maneuvered away from the agitated cetacean. After the orca made 2 complete circles around the vessel, it abruptly departed, rejoining its pod approximately 400 meters away. The incident lasted less than 3 minutes but left the research team shaken. Captain Okalik conducted an immediate damage assessment, determining that while the hull breach remained above the waterline, the structural compromise necessitated immediate return to port. He radioed the Coast Guard to report the incident and request an escort back to Campbell River Harbor as a precautionary measure. In the subsequent investigation, multiple theories emerged regarding T137's unprecedented behavior. Dr. Jensen Miyamoto, a specialist in cetacean behavior who reviewed the footage, suggested the possibility that the hydrophone frequencies may have inadvertently resembled distress calls from another orca pod, potentially triggering a territorial response. Others hypothesized that the orca may have mistaken the vessel's outline for that of a competing predator, particularly given the unusual angle of approach caused by the morning sunlight. Dr. Taylor herself proposed what eventually became the most widely accepted explanation, that T137 may have been exhibiting redirected aggression, following an unseen conflict within the pod or with another marine mammal before the research team's arrival. Subsequent observation of T137 revealed fresh rake marks on his flank that were not present in photographs taken earlier that season, evidence of a possible recent confrontation with another male orca. The incident prompted the Pacific Cetacean Research Institute to revise its vessel design specifications and field protocols. The next-generation research craft featured additional hull reinforcement and incorporated new acoustic technology designed to prevent any potential misinterpretation of signals by marine mammals. Dr. Taylor continued her research on transient orcas, publishing a groundbreaking paper on their complex social dynamics that included an analysis of the unusual encounter. Captain Okalik was later awarded a Maritime Safety Commendation for his exemplary crisis handling. The damaged cetacean surveyor, after extensive repairs, was returned to service with modifications that incorporated lessons learned from the encounter, including enhanced observation platforms and improved emergency stabilization systems. The incident remains one of the best documented cases of apparently intentional ramming behavior by an orca against a vessel, a rare glimpse into the complex and sometimes unpredictable nature of these intelligent marine predators. In the months following the incident, Dr. Taylor and her team conducted extensive reviews of historical orca-vessel interactions throughout the region, discovering 7 unreported cases of similar behavior dating back to the 1970s. Most of these encounters had been dismissed as accidental collisions or exaggerated accounts by recreational boaters. Their comparative analysis revealed a disturbing pattern. All incidents had occurred in areas where naval sonar testing had been conducted within the previous 72 hours. While no naval operations had been officially scheduled near Johnstone Strait on the day of their encounter, Dr. Taylor's subsequent Freedom of Information request revealed that a submarine detection exercise had indeed been conducted approximately 85 kilometers away the previous day. This discovery led to a groundbreaking collaborative research initiative between marine biologists and naval authorities to establish safer operational protocols in orca habitats. The psychological impact on the research team proved significant as well. Dr. Whitfield, who had spent decades working with marine mammals without incident, developed a pronounced anxiety around water-based fieldwork. He later established an innovative remote monitoring program utilizing autonomous drones and AI-powered tracking systems that allowed researchers to maintain greater distances from potentially stressed marine mammals while still collecting high-quality data. Captain Okalik, conversely, advocated for enhanced marine mammal approach training for vessel operators throughout British Columbia, developing a curriculum that incorporated simulation exercises based directly on their encounter with T-137. The Canadian Coast Guard eventually adopted his program as mandatory training for all personnel operating in known orca territories. The Cape Town Marine Life Centre had long been considered one of South Africa's premier aquatic attractions. Established in 1972 during the height of marine conservation awareness, the facility had originally been designed as a rehabilitation center for injured sea creatures before evolving into a tourist destination that both entertained and educated visitors about ocean ecosystems. The center was particularly famous for its open-air shark exhibit, which housed several species native to the waters surrounding the Cape Peninsula, including the formidable bull shark. Maria Delgado Ramos, a 32-year-old Spanish tourist, had been planning her South African vacation for nearly 2 years. An accountant from Barcelona with a passion for marine photography, Maria had specifically included the Cape Town Marine Life Centre on her itinerary after reading about their impressive shark exhibition in a travel magazine. She arrived at the center on a particularly busy Saturday afternoon in March 1995, accompanied by her husband Rafael and their 9-year-old daughter Catalina. The family had spent most of the morning exploring the various exhibits, with Maria meticulously photographing each specimen they encountered. By early afternoon, they reached the main attraction, the Shark Tank, a massive cylindrical structure containing over 300,000 gallons of seawater and housing 7 sharks of various species. The viewing platform featured a circular walkway around the tank, protected by a waist-high glass barrier and a metal railing. The day had been unusually humid, and a light rain earlier that morning had left many of the surfaces around the center slick with moisture. As the Delgado Ramos family approached the exhibit, Maria noticed a particular bull shark, a female measuring approximately 8 feet in length, swimming near the surface. Eager to capture the perfect photograph, she leaned precariously over the safety railing, extending her camera out as far as possible to avoid glare from the glass. Center employee Thabo Nkosi, who had been working at the facility for just over 3 years, spotted Maria's dangerous position and began moving toward her to issue a warning. Before he could reach her, Maria's sandals slipped on the wet concrete. In a fraction of a second, she lost her balance and toppled headfirst over the railing, plummeting 12 feet into the tank below with a tremendous splash. Panic erupted instantly. Catalina screamed for her mother while Raphael frantically called for help. Visitors crowded around the tank, many recording the unfolding disaster on camcorders as Maria surfaced, gasping for air. The sudden disturbance had startled the sharks, sending them into an agitated state. The large female bull shark that Maria had been attempting to photograph quickly changed course and began swimming directly toward her. Marine biologist Dr. Constance Wolfhard, who was leading a tour group nearby, immediately activated the facility's emergency protocol. Alarms blared throughout the center as trained staff rushed to the scene. Meanwhile, Maria treaded water, her training as a former collegiate swimmer helping her stay afloat despite her waterlogged clothing and shoes. The bull shark circled Maria once, then twice, moving closer with each pass. Dr. Wolfhard later explained that the shark was likely investigating rather than hunting, but the distinction mattered little in the moment. On the third pass, the shark suddenly darted forward, its powerful jaws clamping onto Maria's right leg. Visitors watched in horror as the water around her was clouded with blood. Rather than thrashing in panic, a response that might have triggered a feeding frenzy, Maria remained remarkably composed. She later recounted that she remembered reading about sharks being sensitive to direct confrontation. With astonishing presence of mind, she struck the shark's snout forcefully with her fist. The bull shark, perhaps surprised by the counterattack, released her leg and retreated momentarily. This brief window allowed the emergency response team to act. Senior aquarist Jensen McKeesey deployed a specialized rescue pole from the platform above, extending it toward Maria. Simultaneously, his colleagues lowered protective mesh barriers and emergency rescue ropes into the tank to create a temporary separation between Maria and the sharks. With remarkable coordination, they managed to secure her and begin lifting her from the water. The extraction took 97 seconds, a lifetime for those watching, including Raphael and Catalina, who were being comforted by staff members. Once Maria was safely on the platform, medical technician Priya Naikar immediately applied pressure to the wound, a jagged laceration approximately 8 inches long that had severed several blood vessels, but miraculously missed major arteries. An ambulance arrived within minutes, and Maria was rushed to a local hospital, where she underwent emergency surgery. The medical team, led by Dr. Arav Patel, used over 70 stitches to close the deep gashes on her leg. Despite the severity of the injury, they were able to save her leg, though Dr. Patel warned that physical therapy would be a lengthy process. The incident prompted immediate changes at the Cape Town Marine Life Center. Director Frederick Jorgensen announced a comprehensive safety review the following day, resulting in the installation of higher barriers, non-slip flooring throughout the facility, and additional security personnel at each exhibit. The center also developed more rigorous safety protocols, emphasizing the unpredictable nature of marine predators. Maria's recovery took 8 months, during which she became an unexpected advocate for shark conservation. Rather than vilifying the creature that had injured her, she spoke publicly about the importance of understanding and respecting these ancient predators. In a widely circulated interview 6 weeks after the incident, she insisted that the shark had merely reacted instinctively to an unusual situation, one created entirely by human error. By early 1996, Maria had regained most of her mobility, though she retained a prominent scar that she referred to as her shark signature. The following year, she published a collection of underwater photographs, including several taken at the Cape Town Marine Life Center, minutes before her fall. The book, titled Submersion: Perspectives from Above and Below, became a bestseller in Spain and was eventually translated into 11 languages. The incident at Cape Town Marine Life Center remains one of the most dramatic shark encounters to occur in a controlled environment. It stands as a powerful reminder of both the majesty and danger of these evolutionary marvels, as well as the importance of maintaining a respectful distance, both literally and figuratively, from the ocean's apex predators. Cape of Good Hope, South Africa, 2013. The waters surrounding the Cape of Good Hope have long been known for their treacherous conditions and abundant marine life. First navigated by Portuguese explorer Bartolomeu Dias in 1488, this region, where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans meet, has claimed numerous vessels throughout history due to its unpredictable currents, powerful winds, and rocky shorelines. Today, while modern navigation systems have reduced maritime disasters, the Cape remains a formidable seascape, particularly notorious for its shark population, specifically great white sharks, which congregate in these waters due to the presence of seal colonies on nearby islands. In September 2013, the luxury cruise liner Atlantic Majesty was making its way around the Cape during a 14-day voyage from Durban to Cape Town. Among the 1,873 passengers was Catherine Reese, a 29-year-old environmental consultant from Vancouver, who had booked the cruise as a celebration after completing her master's degree in marine biology. Ironically, her thesis had focused on predator-prey dynamics in marine ecosystems, with particular emphasis on shark behavior. On the evening of September 18th, the Atlantic Majesty encountered moderately rough seas as it rounded the Cape. Wind speeds reached approximately 35 knots, creating challenging but not unusual conditions for a vessel of its size. Most passengers had retired to their cabins or indoor entertainment areas to avoid the increasingly inclement weather. But Catherine remained on the starboard observation deck, fascinated by the legendary waters she had studied extensively. According to the ship's security footage, later reviewed by maritime investigators, at approximately 7:42 p.m., Catherine stepped away from the railing momentarily to retrieve her camera from her bag. When she returned to the edge, a sudden powerful wave caused the ship to lurch dramatically. Cruise ship employee Ferdinand Vasquez, who was securing deck furniture nearby, witnessed Catherine lose her balance. Despite his attempt to reach her, she tumbled over the railing, falling approximately 24 meters into the dark, churning waters below. Ferdinand immediately activated the ship's man-overboard protocol, triggering alarms throughout the vessel. Captain Mikhail Petrov ordered an immediate stop and initiated standard search procedures. The ship's position was logged as 34 degrees and 21 minutes south of the equator and 18 degrees and 29 minutes east of the prime meridian, placing them approximately 8 nautical miles off the coast and directly in what marine biologists refer to as the White Shark Triangle, an area known for one of the highest concentrations of great white sharks in the world. In the water, Catherine surfaced after initially plunging several meters deep. Her later testimony credited her survival to 2 factors: her strong swimming abilities developed during years of competitive swimming, and her knowledge of open water survival techniques gained through her studies. She immediately knew to conserve energy by floating rather than swimming vigorously, which might attract predator attention. Despite her training, panic set in when she spotted the silhouette of a large shark, approximately 10 meters away. Based on its distinctive dorsal fin shape and size, marine biologists later identified it as a great white shark, likely measuring between 4 and 4.5 meters in length. Catherine reported that the shark initially maintained distance, exhibiting what scientists refer to as investigative behavior, circling and observing before deciding whether to approach further. After several minutes of this terrifying standoff, the shark suddenly accelerated toward her. In a split-second decision, Catherine attempted to make herself appear larger by extending her limbs, a technique sometimes recommended to deter shark attacks. However, the predator continued its charge, striking her left leg with enough force to pull her momentarily underwater. The shark's teeth penetrated her thigh, creating several deep lacerations, but miraculously missed major arteries. In what marine biologists later described as a test bite, a common behavior where sharks sample potential prey before deciding whether to continue feeding, the shark released her leg and retreated several meters. Catherine, in excruciating pain and losing blood, remembered her training and fought against the instinct to thrash or panic. Instead, she maintained as calm a demeanor as possible while using her uninjured leg to slowly propel herself in the direction of the ship's lights. When the shark circled back and approached again, she instinctively struck it on the snout with her fist, a defensive technique she had studied but never imagined implementing. Meanwhile, the Atlantic Majesty had deployed its emergency rescue vessel, manned by First Officer Nikolai Sokolov and 3 crew members. Using spotlights to scan the water's surface, they finally located Catherine approximately 350 meters from the ship. As they approached, they witnessed the shark circling her, preparing for another attack. Crew member Anastasia Orlova, trained in marine rescue operations, deployed a specialized shark deterrent device, an electromagnetic field generator designed to overwhelm shark-sensitive electroreceptors. The device created enough disruption to divert the shark temporarily, allowing the rescue team to pull Catherine aboard their vessel at 8:17 p.m., approximately 35 minutes after she had fallen overboard. The ship's medical team, led by Dr. Elena Vasquez, immediately treated Catherine for hypothermia, shock, and the severe lacerations to her leg. The ship diverted course to Cape Town, where Catherine was airlifted to a local hospital for emergency surgery. Surgeons performed a 5-hour procedure to repair damaged muscle tissue and blood vessels in her leg. The incident received international media attention, with marine biologists noting the rarity of surviving such an encounter in open water. Dr. Jacobus van der Merwe, a shark behavior expert who interviewed Catherine extensively during her recovery, stated that her survival represented an extraordinary combination of knowledge, quick thinking, and remarkable luck. Catherine spent 3 weeks in the hospital before returning to Canada, where she underwent 6 months of physical therapy. Despite her traumatic experience, she continued her career in marine biology, eventually specializing in shark conservation efforts. In 2015, she published a widely acclaimed paper on predatory behavior in great whites, drawing partially from her first-hand experience. She also became an advocate for improved safety protocols on cruise ships operating in known shark territories. The Atlantic Majesty incident led to industry-wide reviews of passenger safety protocols on observation decks during adverse weather conditions. Several cruise lines subsequently implemented enhanced railing systems and additional safety monitoring for passengers on exterior decks during challenging sea conditions. Coastal waters of Western Australia have long been recognized as one of the world's most significant habitats for great white sharks. The region's abundant marine life, particularly its seal colonies, attracts these apex predators in considerable numbers. Esperance, a picturesque port town located approximately 720 kilometers southeast of Perth, has experienced several notable shark encounters over the decades, with local fishing communities maintaining a cautious respect for these powerful creatures. Darren Thompson, a 42-year-old commercial fisherman with over 20 years of experience in these waters, had developed a reputation among his peers for his extensive knowledge of marine life and, more concerningly, his increasingly cavalier attitude toward sharks. Having witnessed numerous shark encounters during his career, Darren had begun to express a fascination with these predators that his colleagues found worrying. Fellow fisherman Malcolm Jeffries later recalled warning Darren about his growing complacency, telling him, "Familiarity with danger doesn't reduce the risk, it just makes a person less aware of it." On the morning of March 18, 2010, Darren and his fishing partner Benjamin Crawford set out in Darren's 8-meter vessel Southern Cross to check their crayfish pots approximately 3 kilometers offshore. Weather conditions were ideal: clear skies, light winds, and calm seas. The pair had been working for about 3 hours and had collected a substantial haul when they noticed several seabirds circling and diving nearby, typically an indication of baitfish activity. Darren decided to investigate, steering the boat toward the feeding birds. As they approached, Benjamin spotted the distinctive dorsal fin of a large shark cutting through the water's surface. According to Benjamin's later testimony to maritime authorities, Darren immediately became excited, identifying the animal as a great white shark and estimating its length at approximately 4.5 meters, 15 feet. A substantial specimen even for this species. Rather than maintaining a respectful distance, Darren reduced the boat's speed and began following the shark, maneuvering to keep it in view. Marine biologist Dr. Elise Hartman, who later investigated the incident, noted that this pursuit behavior likely altered the shark's natural movement patterns, potentially creating a stress response in the animal. After tracking the shark for nearly 20 minutes, Darren made the fateful decision that would forever change his life. Despite Benjamin's vehement objections, Darren positioned the boat alongside the shark's path and cut the engine. As the great white approached, swimming parallel to the vessel at a distance of less than 2 meters, Darren moved to the gunwale and leaned over the side. Benjamin reported that he shouted at Darren to get back from the edge, but his warnings went unheeded. In what Benjamin described as a moment of insane curiosity, Darren extended his right arm toward the passing shark, apparently attempting to touch its dorsal fin. The shark, likely startled by this unusual stimulus, reacted with explosive speed. In a defensive rather than predatory response, it twisted sideways and seized Darren's arm just below the elbow. The force of the bite pulled Darren partially over the side of the boat. Benjamin, reacting instinctively, grabbed Darren's legs and pulled him back, likely preventing him from being pulled entirely into the water. A scenario that would almost certainly have proven fatal. Even with Benjamin's intervention, the shark maintained its grip for several agonizing seconds before releasing Darren's arm and disappearing into the depths. The severity of Darren's injury became immediately apparent. The shark's teeth had severed major blood vessels and crushed bone, nearly detaching his forearm. Benjamin, displaying remarkable presence of mind, immediately applied a tourniquet using a rope from their fishing gear and radioed for emergency assistance. He then started the boat's engine and headed toward shore at maximum speed, all while maintaining pressure on Darren's wound. Royal Flying Doctor Service pilot Victoria Sanderson received the distress call and immediately dispatched a medical evacuation helicopter from Esperance Regional Hospital. The helicopter intercepted the fishing vessel approximately 1.5 kilometers from shore, allowing paramedics Samuel Wong and Jasmine Patel to board and stabilize Darren before airlifting him directly to the hospital. Emergency surgeon Dr. Haidar Al-Yassiri performed a 5-hour operation to save Darren's arm, reconnecting severed blood vessels and stabilizing shattered bones. Despite these efforts, infection set in 2 days later, necessitating partial amputation below the elbow. Darren spent 3 weeks in the hospital before beginning an extensive rehabilitation program. The incident received significant media attention throughout Australia, with public opinion divided between sympathy for Darren's suffering and criticism of his reckless behavior. Marine conservation groups used the case as an opportunity to educate the public about responsible interaction with marine predators, emphasizing that even experienced professionals should maintain appropriate boundaries with wildlife. During his recovery, Darren acknowledged the gravity of his error and told the local newspaper, the Esperance Courier, that he had seen so many sharks over the years that he had started thinking of them as just another fish. He admitted that the split-second decision had nearly cost him his life and had certainly cost him his career as he knew it. Despite the trauma of his experience, Darren eventually returned to the fishing industry, though in a different capacity. Unable to work as an active fisherman due to his injury, he became an advocate for shark safety, working with the Western Australian Department of Fisheries to develop improved protocols for commercial fishing operations in shark-inhabited waters. He frequently visited schools along the Western Australian coast, sharing his story as a cautionary tale about respecting marine predators. The incident near Esperance remains one of Australia's most frequently cited examples of the dangers of anthropomorphizing wild predators and the importance of maintaining proper distance and respect when sharing the ocean with its most powerful inhabitants. As Dr. Hartman noted in her analysis of the case, the ocean's apex predators don't understand curiosity or admiration. They perceive potential threats and respond accordingly. The lesson here isn't that sharks are malicious, but rather that they are wild animals deserving of appropriate boundaries. The waters off the Cape Peninsula had always been known for their treacherous nature. Cold Atlantic currents collided with warmer Indian Ocean flows, creating a unique marine ecosystem that attracted diverse wildlife, including the notorious great white sharks that patrolled these waters. The shipwreck of the Thaddeus, a Portuguese merchant vessel that sank in 1865 after striking a reef in a violent storm, had become a legendary dive site for experienced adventurers seeking to explore its scattered remains across the ocean floor. For 7 friends, Luke Darrow, Michael Prestwick, Sophia Renaud, Dominic Alvarez, Victor Chen, Amelia Thornbridge, and Elijah Whitaker, this wreck represented the pinnacle of their shared passion. Having met during their university days at the Cape Town Oceanography Institute 15 years prior, they had formed an unbreakable bond through countless diving expeditions across the globe. Each member of the group brought unique skills. Luke was the natural leader with uncanny navigational abilities, Michael the marine historian, Sophia the photographer, Dominic the safety expert, Victor the medical professional, Amelia the marine biologist, and Elijah the experienced equipment specialist. That particular morning in June 1997, a thin fog hovered over the water as their chartered boat, the Mariner's Quest, cut through the swells toward the dive site. Captain Hendricks, a weathered local seaman, had warned them about unusual water temperatures reported that week, nearly 3 degrees colder than seasonal norms. The group acknowledged his concern but proceeded with their plans. They had dived in worse conditions. As they suited up on deck, Elijah noticed Luke's unusual quietness. When asked about it, Luke had merely shrugged. mentioning a strange dream the previous night about swimming in endless darkness. The group had laughed it off as pre-dive nerves, something they rarely witnessed in their fearless leader. They entered the water in pairs, descending along the anchor line through visibility that diminished faster than expected. At 60 feet down, the water had turned an uncharacteristic murky green, with visibility reduced to barely 15 feet. Through hand signals, Luke suggested they proceed with caution, staying closer together than originally planned. The wreck materialized from the gloom, skeletal ribs of wood and metal stretching across the sand like the remains of some ancient creature. The team moved methodically, photographing and documenting sections as they had done dozens of times before. 40 minutes into the dive, they reached the ship's broken stern, where cargo had spilled centuries ago across the seafloor. It was there that Sophia noticed the strange silence. Normally, the underwater environment buzzed with the clicks, pops, and whooshes of marine life, but now there was only the sound of their bubbles. She signaled this observation to the others, and an unmistakable tension spread through the group. Dominic tapped his pressure gauge, indicating they should begin their return journey. Without warning, the water around them vibrated with sudden force. A massive shadow moved at the edge of visibility, circling once before disappearing again. The team instinctively tightened their formation, back to back as they'd practiced for shark encounters. But nothing had prepared them for what emerged from the gloom. A 23-foot great white shark, abnormally large even for these waters, charged into their midst with explosive speed. Its pale underbelly flashed as it twisted and seized Luke before anyone could react, pulling him into deeper water in seconds. His bubbles created a frantic trail that quickly dissipated in the current. Panic erupted. Michael and Sophia raced in Luke's direction while Dominic frantically signaled for the others to ascend. The shark returned, this time targeting the scattered group with methodical precision. Amelia and Victor, swimming close together, were the next to disappear in another violent surge of water and bubbles. Elijah, who had been slightly separated documenting a section of the wreck, witnessed the second attack but couldn't reach his friends in time. As he swam toward them, he saw Michael grabbed next, the shark clamping down on his tank, dragging him sideways through the water. Sophia and Dominic, now desperately swimming upward, managed to reach 40 feet before the shark returned. In the frenzied moments that followed, Dominic pushed Sophia toward the surface, turning to face the predator with only his diving knife. His sacrifice gave Sophia precious seconds but cost him his life. Elijah and Sophia were the only two who reached the surface. As they were pulled aboard by Captain Hendricks, they gasped out what had happened below. A search commenced immediately, but deteriorating weather conditions forced them to return to shore 3 hours later with no sign of their 5 companions. The incident became one of the deadliest recorded shark attacks in South African waters. Marine biologists later theorized that unusual water temperatures had disrupted normal feeding patterns, driving deeper water predators into unusual hunting behaviors. Others suggested the shark might have been protecting territory or responding to unknown environmental factors. For Sophia and Elijah, the ocean that had once been their greatest joy became a source of unending nightmares. They never dived again. Sophia channeled her grief into underwater photography from boats, creating award-winning documentation of marine conservation efforts. Elijah established the Darrow Prestwick Thornbridge Foundation, which funded research into shark behavior and promoted responsible human-shark interaction protocols. The Silent Abyss, as their story came to be known in diving communities worldwide, served as a sobering reminder of humanity's vulnerability in the face of nature's most perfectly evolved predators, and of the bonds of friendship that could transcend even the most profound loss. The waters surrounding the remote Pemba Island in the Zanzibar archipelago had long been known among marine archaeologists as a treasure trove of historical wrecks. Located along ancient trade routes connecting East Africa, the Middle East, and India, these waters had witnessed centuries of maritime commerce and tragedy. Dozens of vessels had met their fate among the treacherous reefs and unpredictable currents that characterized this stretch of the Indian Ocean, leaving their remains scattered across the sandy bottom in silent testimony to the sea's power. Sam Whitbridge, a 29-year-old research diver with the International Maritime Archaeology Institute, had spent 3 years pursuing rumors of a particularly significant wreck supposedly located in the deep channels between Pemba and the smaller Masali Island. Historical records from Portuguese colonial archives suggested that the Santo Antonio da Barra, a heavily armed merchant vessel carrying spices, ivory, and possibly royal correspondence, had disappeared in these waters during a storm in 1697. If located, the wreck would provide invaluable insights into the complex trade networks that had shaped the region's history. After months of methodical survey work using side-scan sonar and magnetometers, Sam's team had finally detected a promising anomaly approximately 2 kilometers off Masali's western reef. In May 2002, the team, consisting of Sam, marine archaeologist Dr. Fatima Mwangi, underwater photographer Vernon Takahashi, and 3 support divers, established a temporary research station on Masali Island to conduct a detailed investigation of the site. Their first 3 exploratory dives confirmed their hopes. The scattered remains of what appeared to be a late 17th century vessel lay in approximately 30 meters of water. The site featured several intact cannons, a portion of the wooden hull preserved by centuries underwater, and most excitingly, a section of cargo still arranged as it had been stored, protected by collapsed decking. On their 4th day of documentation, the weather conditions were particularly favorable, with exceptional visibility extending to nearly 25 meters. The team decided to split into pairs to document different sections of the wreckage. Sam and Vernon descended to investigate what appeared to be the ship's stern, where the captain's quarters would have been located, potentially containing the most historically significant artifacts. As they carefully photographed and measured a section containing ornate wood carvings, Sam noticed an unusual shadow moving across the sand beyond the wreckage. Initially assuming it was another diver from their team, he gestured to Vernon to continue his documentation while Sam investigated. Swimming several meters beyond the wreck's perimeter, Sam realized the shifting shadow was too large and moving too fluidly to be human. Before he could signal a warning, a great white shark, estimated later at nearly 5 meters in length and unusually far north for its species, emerged from the deeper water channel. With no preliminary circling or investigative behavior, the predator charged directly toward Sam. Its massive jaws clamped onto his right calf, the pressure immediately crushing through his wetsuit and into flesh and bone. Vernon, absorbed in his photography, only realized something was wrong when he felt the vibration of Sam's scream through the water. Looking up, he witnessed his colleague being dragged toward the wreckage, leaving a cloud of blood in his wake. The shark shook Sam violently, then began pulling him toward deeper water. Despite the shock and danger, Sam managed to maintain enough presence of mind to remember his emergency training. Using a metal documentation tool he had been holding, he struck repeatedly at the shark's sensitive gills and eyes. After what seemed an eternity but was likely only seconds, the predator released its grip and retreated into the blue. Vernon immediately rushed to Sam, who was already beginning to show signs of shock. Grabbing his colleague's buoyancy compensator, Vernon inflated both their buoyancy control devices and began a controlled emergency ascent, mindful of the danger of decompression sickness despite the crisis. The rest of the team, alerted by the commotion, converged to assist. Upon reaching the surface, they signaled their support boat, which raced to retrieve them. The team applied pressure bandages to Sam's severely mangled leg while administering emergency oxygen. Their remote location complicated matters significantly. The nearest medical facility with appropriate trauma capabilities was on Zanzibar's main island, nearly 3 hours away by their fastest boat. Dr. Mwangi used the boat's radio to arrange for emergency medical transport, while the others worked to stabilize Sam, who drifted in and out of consciousness as shock and blood loss took their toll. A fishing vessel in the area responded to their distress call and provided additional first aid supplies and an extra crew member to help navigate the fastest route to Stonetown. By the time they reached the hospital, Sam had lost dangerous amounts of blood, and his right leg was damaged beyond repair below the knee. Emergency surgery saved his life but not his lower leg. After initial stabilization, he was airlifted to a specialized facility in Dar es Salaam for additional treatment before eventually returning to England for rehabilitation. Sam's recovery process proved arduous, both physically and psychologically. The trauma of the attack, combined with the abrupt end to his diving career, triggered a profound depression that required extensive therapy. 15 months after the incident, however, Sam surprised his former colleagues by returning to Tanzania, not to dive, but to assist in the continued documentation of the Santo Antonio de Barra from shore. With a custom-designed prosthetic leg, Sam refocused his career on the historical research and conservation aspects of marine archaeology. He established the Masali Maritime Heritage Project, which trained local Tanzanian divers in archaeological techniques, while implementing new safety protocols specifically addressing predator awareness in research diving. The great white that attacked Sam was never seen again in the area, leaving marine biologists to speculate about what had brought it so far from its typical habitat. Some suggested that changing ocean temperatures had altered traditional migration patterns, while others theorized it might have been following food sources through the Mozambique Channel. The wreck of the Santo Antonio da Barra eventually yielded significant artifacts, including the royal seal of the Portuguese monarchy, and previously unknown cartographic materials that rewrote historians' understanding of early navigation in the western Indian Ocean. Sam's near-fatal encounter became a footnote in the discovery's significance, though for those who witnessed it, the forgotten marker of the attack site remained a solemn reminder of the ocean's unpredictable nature. The Florida Keys had been Raymond Ray Harrington's home for over 30 years, ever since he'd abandoned a promising career in Boston's financial district for the simpler life of a commercial fisherman. At 57, Ray had developed the weathered complexion and calloused hands of someone who had spent countless hours on the water. His 26-foot skiff, the Jenny May, named after his late wife, was a familiar sight throughout the Lower Keys, where Ray had established himself as one of the most productive independent lobster fishermen in the region. April 2010 marked the final weeks of lobster season, and Ray was determined to maximize his haul before the annual closure. With prices at a seasonal high and his traps consistently full, he had been working longer hours than usual, often heading out before dawn and returning well after sunset. His fellow fishermen at the Stock Island Marina had commented on his punishing schedule, but Ray had brushed off their concerns with his characteristic dry humor, noting that retirement would provide plenty of time for rest. The morning of April 17th began like countless others in Ray's maritime routine. He departed from the marina at 5:15 a.m., navigating by memory and the dim glow of his instrument panel through the familiar channels. His destination was an area approximately 12 miles southwest of Key West, where he had deployed a line of 37 lobster traps along a productive section of Patch Reef. The weather forecast promised ideal conditions: light easterly winds, calm seas, and excellent visibility. By mid-morning, Ray had successfully retrieved, emptied, and rebaited 23 of his traps. The day's catch had already exceeded his expectations, with the coolers aboard the Jenny May filled with nearly 70 pounds of prime Florida spiny lobster. As he worked his way along the trap line, Ray maintained his methodical approach. Locate the trap buoy, hook it with his gaff, pull the line aboard, secure it around the hydraulic puller, and then retrieve the trap from the bottom. At approximately 11:30 a.m., Ray was processing a particularly productive trap when he noticed an unusual movement in the water nearby. In these transparent shallows, barely 18 feet deep, it was common to spot various marine life, including the occasional nurse shark or reef shark attracted by the bait and disrupted marine life. Ray had encountered hundreds of such sharks over his career, and had developed a healthy respect for them without particular fear. What Ray initially dismissed as a typical reef shark, however, quickly revealed itself as something far more dangerous. A tiger shark, later estimated at nearly 12 feet long, had been patrolling the area, likely attracted by the consistent food source created by Ray's regular baiting of his traps. Tiger sharks, known for their indiscriminate feeding habits and powerful jaws, were uncommon, but not unheard of in these waters. As Ray leaned over the gunwale to pull aboard a trap, the shark suddenly charged the boat. Whether triggered by the splashing, the scent of bait, or Ray's movement, the predator lunged with explosive force. Its massive jaws clamped around Ray's right arm just below the elbow, pulling him halfway over the side of the skiff in an instant. Despite the shock and catastrophic injury, Ray maintained enough presence of mind to brace his legs against the inside of the hull, preventing himself from being pulled completely overboard. With his free left hand, he desperately grabbed for the gaff hook secured along the gunwale. Managing to grasp it, he struck repeatedly at the shark's head and gills, each impact sending shockwaves of pain through his partially severed arm. After what seemed an eternity, but was likely less than 30 seconds, the shark released its grip and disappeared into the depths, leaving behind a horrific injury and seawater stained crimson with Ray's blood. Summoning remarkable composure, Ray knew his survival depended on immediate action. Using his belt and a rag from his bait cooler, he fashioned a crude tourniquet for his mangled arm, pulling it tight with his teeth and remaining hand. The Jenny May's radio was his lifeline. Though fading from blood loss and shock, Ray managed to broadcast a distress call with his position and situation. Luck was partially on his side. A Coast Guard patrol vessel was operating less than 7 miles away and immediately diverted to his location. While waiting for rescue, Ray used the boat's throttle to begin a slow, one-handed journey toward Key West, reasoning that every minute closer to shore improved his chances. 28 minutes after his distress call, the Coast Guard intercepted the Jenny May. Paramedics aboard the rescue vessel found Ray still conscious, but in advanced hypovolemic shock. They stabilized him as the patrol boat raced toward Key West at maximum speed, where a trauma helicopter was already inbound from Miami. Ray's right arm could not be saved. The tiger shark's powerful jaws had crushed bones and severed major blood vessels beyond repair. After multiple surgeries and a week in intensive care, Ray began the long process of recovery and adaptation to life with a single arm. The commercial fishing community throughout the Keys rallied around one of their own, organizing fundraisers to help with medical expenses and volunteering to maintain Ray's traps during his absence. Many expected that the traumatic event would end Ray's fishing career, a reasonable assumption that Ray himself initially shared during his early recovery. Yet 6 months after the attack, he surprised the Stock Island Marina community by returning to the docks with a modified version of the Jenny May. Working with a marine engineer and using some of the donation funds, Ray had adapted his vessel for single-handed operation, with relocated controls, hydraulic assists, and custom-designed trap handling equipment. Within a year, Ray had resumed his lobster fishing operation, though on a reduced scale. His experience transformed him into an unexpected advocate for shark conservation and fishing safety. He began speaking at fishermen's associations throughout Florida about the importance of proper emergency medical supplies aboard all vessels and techniques for safely working in shark-inhabited waters. When interviewed about his experience by local media, Ray consistently emphasized that he considered the incident an occupational hazard rather than a reason for fear or retribution against sharks. The tiger shark that attacked Ray was never identified. Marine biologists from the University of Miami, who interviewed Ray about the incident, noted that tiger shark populations in the Florida Keys had been showing changing behavioral patterns, possibly due to alterations in prey distribution related to warming water temperatures throughout the region. Ray Harrington, now in his late 60s but no less determined, continues the work that nearly cost him his life, work he could never bring himself to abandon. In 2013, the waters surrounding Cape Point, South Africa, remained as treacherous as they had been for centuries. Known to local fishermen as the graveyard of ships, this stretch where the Atlantic and Indian Oceans collided has claimed countless vessels since the 1500s. The jagged rocks and unpredictable currents made navigation difficult, but the unseen predators beneath the surface posed an equally formidable threat. The South African Navy maintained a small research outpost nearby, monitoring shipping lanes and conducting oceanic studies in these biologically diverse waters, home to one of the world's largest populations of great white sharks. Lieutenant Commander Thabo Nkosi, Ensign Dumsani Venter, and Petty Officer Kefilwe Mabaso were part of a 6-person crew aboard the SNS Protea, a 12-meter research vessel deployed for routine sonar testing. The team had been mapping underwater topography and collecting acoustic data on marine life activity for the past 3 days. Lieutenant Commander Nkosi, a 15-year veteran with extensive experience in these waters, had expressed mild concern about the unusually high shark activity reported by local fishermen that week. Still, the mission was considered low risk and proceeded as scheduled. At approximately 14:30 on November 8th, the sky was clear and the sea relatively calm as the SNS Protea drifted 5 kilometers offshore. The remaining crew members, Petty Officers Anelin Lovu, Ensign Peter Botha, and Medical Officer Dr. Mandla Kumalo, were inside the cabin analyzing data. In contrast, the other 3 officers worked on deck, adjusting sonar equipment that had malfunctioned since morning. What happened next occurred quickly, and later reconstructions relied heavily on Dr. Kumalo's testimony and partial footage from the vessel's weather camera. According to these accounts, a massive shadow appeared beneath the boat's starboard side. Petty Officer Ndlovu, who had just stepped onto the deck, reported seeing a dorsal fin momentarily break the surface, unusual behavior for a great white, which typically attacked from below. The impact came without warning. A great white shark, later estimated to be approximately 6 meters long and weighing nearly 2 tons, rammed the vessel with such force that the boat lurched violently to port. The 3 officers working on deck were thrown off balance. Before they could recover, a second strike hit the underside of the hull, causing the vessel to capsize. All 6 crew members were ejected into the water. The 3 officers inside the cabin, Ndlovu, Botha, and Dr. Kumalo, managed to swim clear of the overturned boat. The other 3 were not as fortunate. According to Dr. Kumalo's report, Lieutenant Commander Nkosi was dragged underwater immediately. The shark, exhibiting what marine biologists later described as highly unusual aggressive behavior, seized him with tremendous force. Despite desperate attempts by Ensign Botha to reach him, Nkosi disappeared beneath the surface within seconds. Petty Officer Mabaso, disoriented from the capsizing, struggled in the water approximately 5 meters from the overturned vessel. Dr. Kumalo and Ensign Botha reported seeing the shark's dorsal fin slicing through the water toward him. His screams alerted them, but the distance was too great. The shark attacked with devastating efficiency, inflicting a catastrophic bite to Mabaso's right leg. Despite Dr. Kumalo's immediate medical intervention after pulling him onto the exposed hull of the capsized vessel, Mabaso succumbed to blood loss within minutes. Ensign Venter, the third casualty, had been trapped beneath equipment when the boat overturned. According to survivor accounts, he surfaced briefly, appearing disoriented and struggling to stay afloat. The 3 survivors instructed him to swim toward the hull, but he slipped beneath the surface before reaching them. Later examination determined he had drowned during the chaos, likely due to a head injury sustained during the capsizing. The 3 survivors clung to the overturned hull for nearly 3 hours before a fishing vessel spotted the wreckage. During this time, they reported seeing the shark circling repeatedly, sometimes striking the hull. Behavior marine biologists later classified as territorial rather than predatory. The incident prompted the South African Navy to overhaul safety protocols for small vessels in known shark territories. Subsequently, sonar testing operations were conducted from larger ships with reinforced hulls, and shark deterrent systems became standard issue. Dr. Kumalo, deeply affected by witnessing his colleagues' deaths, later established the Nkosi Venter Mabaso Foundation, which funded research into shark behavior and developed new technologies for predicting and preventing similar attacks. His testimony provided valuable insights into the previously undocumented great white aggression patterns. The shark was never captured, but tracking data collected from the area in subsequent months suggested it might have been one of the largest great whites ever recorded in South African waters, a female that local researchers had nicknamed Phantom, due to its elusive nature and unusual hunting patterns. A memorial plaque now stands at Cape Point Naval Station, commemorating the 3 officers who lost their lives in one of the most unusual shark encounters in South Africa's maritime history. In 2008, the crystal-clear waters surrounding the island of Nosy Be off Madagascar's northwestern coast had long been celebrated for their exceptional biodiversity. The region's deep water trenches and vibrant coral reefs created a unique marine ecosystem that attracted tourists and scientific expeditions. Less publicized in travel brochures was the area's significant population of tiger sharks, whose territorial waters extended throughout the Mozambique Channel. The Madagascar Coast Guard maintained a small but efficient rescue unit on the island, responsible for monitoring tourist activities and responding to emergencies across a vast maritime territory. Captain Rakoto Andrianampoina Marina, an 18-year veteran of the Madagascar Coast Guard, commanded the rescue helicopter unit stationed at Nosy Be. The team conducted regular training exercises to maintain readiness for the scenarios they might encounter in their challenging jurisdiction. On September 23rd, under Captain Andrianampoina Marina's supervision, they performed a routine rescue drill approximately 3 kilometers offshore from Mbatalaoaka Beach. Warrant Officer Haja Razafindrakoto volunteered to play the role of a distressed swimmer during this particular exercise. The scenario simulated a tourist stranded after a boat capsize, a common emergency in the area. Lieutenant Tantali Randrianarasan operated the winch system while Sergeant Nerina Rakotondrabe managed communications and observed their aging but well-maintained Bell 412 helicopter from the cabin door. The weather conditions seemed perfect for training: minimal wind, excellent visibility, and calm seas. According to the meteorological report filed before the exercise, the water temperature registered at 27 degrees Celsius with moderate currents flowing north to south along the coastline. Warrant Officer Razafindrakoto wore a standard orange rescue suit equipped with emergency beacons and communication devices as he was lowered into the water at approximately 14:30 local time. The first phase of the exercise proceeded flawlessly. Razafindrakoto successfully simulated distress signals, and the helicopter maintained a perfect position overhead. After completing the required period in the water, Lieutenant Randrianarasan initiated the recovery process, lowering the rescue harness. Razafindrakoto secured himself properly, and the winch raised him toward the hovering aircraft. What happened next occurred with such speed that the subsequent investigation relied heavily on the helicopter's mounted cameras and the testimony of the 3 survivors. When Razafindrakoto had been raised approximately 4 meters above the water's surface, the team noticed unusual turbulence directly below. Before anyone could react, a tiger shark, later estimated to be nearly 4 meters long, launched itself from the water with extraordinary power. According to Sergeant Rakotandrabe's official statement, the shark's jaws clamped onto Razafindra right leg with such force that the helicopter lurched downward. The winch motor strained against the sudden additional weight, triggering emergency alarms in the cockpit. Captain Andriana Marina reported that the aircraft's stability systems were momentarily compromised as the helicopter dropped nearly 2 meters in altitude before he could compensate. Razafindra, suspended helplessly in mid-air, encountered a scenario no rescue training had ever contemplated. The shark maintained its grip, its substantial weight pulling against the winch system while its powerful body thrashed violently. Lieutenant Randrian Arison, witnessing the unprecedented attack, immediately increased the winch speed to maximum capacity while reporting the situation to Captain Andriana Marina. For approximately 22 seconds, a time frame established by the helicopter's recording systems, the shark remained attached to Razafindra leg, creating a nightmarish tug-of-war between the aircraft and the predator. The helicopter's winch motor, designed for standard rescue operations but never tested against the weight of a large shark, emitted ominous mechanical protests. According to the maintenance chief, who later examined the equipment, the system came within moments of catastrophic failure. After a particularly violent shake, the shark finally released its grip, disappearing swiftly into the depths. Razafindra, remarkably still conscious despite catastrophic injuries to his lower right leg, was quickly pulled into the cabin, where Sergeant Rakotandrabe applied emergency medical procedures. Captain Andriana Marina immediately diverted from the training exercise, radioing for emergency medical support and flying directly to a hospital at maximum speed. The medical team later reported that Razafindra had suffered compound fractures to his tibia and fibula, along with severe tissue damage. Remarkably, no major arteries had been severed, a circumstance doctors attributed to the unusual angle of the bite and the structural support provided by the rescue harness straps that had partially absorbed the pressure. After multiple surgeries and intensive rehabilitation, Razafindra retained his leg, though with significant mobility limitations that ended his active rescue career. The incident marked the first documented case of a shark attacking a person being hoisted by a helicopter, creating ripples through rescue communities worldwide. The Madagascar Coast Guard implemented substantial protocol changes for marine exercises, including shark spotters, protective cages for water-based training, and enhanced emergency response capabilities specific to marine predator encounters. Marine biologists studied the incident extensively, theorizing that the shark may have mistaken the dangling figure for prey, potentially attracted by the vibrations of the helicopter rotors that could have resembled struggling fish. The case became required study material for global rescue units operating in shark-inhabited waters. Captain Andriana Marina was later awarded the National Merit Medal for his exceptional crisis handling. The recording of the incident, while restricted from public circulation, became an essential training tool for maritime rescue teams across the Indian Ocean region. Warrant Officer Razafindra, after his recovery, became an instructor at the Coast Guard Academy, where he incorporated his extraordinary experience into training protocols designed to prepare rescue personnel for even the most improbable scenarios. In 2011, the Mamanuca Island chain of Fiji had established itself as one of the South Pacific's premier destinations for destination weddings and bachelor parties, with its pristine beaches, crystal-clear waters, and exclusive resorts. Many tourists were unaware of the archipelago's complex marine ecosystem that supported over 30 species of sharks. Local traditions had long revered these creatures, particularly the tiger shark, known in Fijian mythology as Dakuwaka, the guardian of the reef. Resort staff typically provided basic safety briefings to visitors, though these warnings were sometimes disregarded by vacationers more focused on celebration than precaution. Zachary Thornfield, a 29-year-old investment banker from Boston, had chosen the exclusive Tokariki Island resort venue for his bachelor weekend. He invited 5 close friends from his college rowing team: Maxwell Rutherford, Preston Wellington, Harrison Blackwood, Jackson Montgomery, and the best man Daniel Farnsworth. The group had arrived on May 23rd, occupying one of the resort's premium beachfront villas with a private dock and chartered catamaran. According to staff accounts, the first 2 days proceeded without incident, filled with scuba diving, fishing expeditions, and evening cocktails. The resort's activity coordinator, Samisi Rokotuivuna, had conducted a standard safety orientation upon their arrival, emphasizing water safety protocols, including the strict prohibition against swimming after sunset when certain marine predators became more active. On the evening of May 26th, the third day of their stay, the group chartered a sunset cruise aboard the resort's 15-meter catamaran, the Maramavu. The vessel was captained by Josiah Vatanitawake, with first mate Elisa Nabukavu assisting. According to the subsequent investigation report, the cruise departed the resort marina at approximately 16:30, carrying the 6 Americans and a small crew, including a bartender and chef who prepared a lavish seafood dinner. The catamaran is anchored in a sheltered cove approximately 3 kilometers from the resort, in a location known for its spectacular sunset views against the backdrop of Monteriki Island, famously featured in the film Cast Away. Captain Vatanitawake later reported that the Americans had consumed significant quantities of alcohol throughout the afternoon and evening, though he maintained they did not appear severely impaired. As the sun began to set around 1845, Captain Vatanitawake advised the group that they would be returning to the resort within 30 minutes and explicitly reminded them that swimming was not permitted at dusk. According to his statement, he specifically warned about increased shark activity in the area, noting that local fishermen had recently observed several large tiger sharks in nearby waters. Despite these warnings, at approximately 19:10, as the crew was preparing to raise the anchor, Thornfield spontaneously jumped into the water, shouting that he wanted one last swim before getting shackled for life. Caught up in the moment, Rutherford, Wellington, Blackwood, and Montgomery followed him into the water. Only the best man, Farnsworth, remained aboard, later telling investigators he had felt uneasy about swimming in darkening waters. Captain Vatanitawake immediately ordered them to return to the vessel, but the men, buoyed by alcohol and excitement, began swimming away from the catamaran. First mate Nabukavu rushed to deploy the vessel's tender boat to retrieve them when the evening's celebratory atmosphere shattered. According to multiple witness accounts, Wellington suddenly screamed and was violently pulled underwater approximately 20 meters from the catamaran. The water around him erupted in turbulence as the other swimmers began shouting and frantically swimming toward the vessel. Captain Vatanitawake immediately activated the catamaran's powerful deck lights, illuminating the chaos unfolding in the water. A tiger shark, later estimated by marine biologists to be approximately 4.5 meters long, had seized Wellington around the torso. As his friends reached him, the predator maintained its grip, beginning the characteristic side-to-side thrashing motion that tiger sharks use to tear flesh. Thornfield, Rutherford, and Montgomery attempted to intervene, pummeling the shark while Blackwood tried pulling Wellington free. In what first mate Nabukavu later described as an act of extraordinary quick thinking, Farnsworth grabbed a foam pool noodle from the catamaran's recreational equipment and dove into the water with it. Swimming directly toward the melee, he forced the flexible foam tube between the shark's gills in a desperate attempt to disrupt its breathing. The unusual tactic momentarily confused the predator, causing it to release Wellington and retreat into deeper water. The crew retrieved all 5 men using the tender boat and the catamaran's emergency rescue equipment. Wellington had suffered catastrophic injuries to his abdomen and lower chest. Despite immediate first aid efforts by the crew and his friends, he lost consciousness due to extensive blood loss. Captain Vatanitawake radioed for emergency assistance while navigating at maximum speed toward the resort's medical facility. A medical evacuation helicopter was dispatched from Nadi, but Wellington was pronounced dead shortly before it arrived. Autopsy reports later confirmed that he had succumbed to a combination of massive trauma, blood loss, and shock, with over 60% of his liver destroyed by the initial bite. The incident sent shockwaves through Fiji's tourism industry and triggered a comprehensive review of safety protocols across all resorts. The Fijian Maritime Safety Authority implemented stricter regulations regarding sunset and nighttime water activities, requiring all charter vessels to carry enhanced shark deterrent systems and additional emergency medical equipment. The tragedy transformed what should have been Thornfield's wedding celebration into a somber homecoming, with his friends' remains accompanying him. The wedding was postponed indefinitely, and Thornfield later established the Preston Wellington Ocean Safety Foundation, which funded shark research and improved safety education for tourists throughout the South Pacific. Marine biologists conducted extensive studies of the incident, concluding that the attack likely resulted from a combination of factors, including poor visibility at dusk, the shark possibly confusing the splashing swimmers with injured prey, and the shark's potential attraction to food particles in the water from the seafood dinner preparation earlier that evening. The resort installed a memorial plaque at its main beach, a sobering reminder of the ocean's hidden dangers lurking beneath its postcard-perfect surface. Captain Vadanitawake continued working in Fiji's tourism industry, incorporating his first-hand experience into enhanced safety briefings that, according to resort management, significantly improved visitor compliance with water safety protocols in the years following the tragedy.